The last thing she said to me before the trial was just 4 words: "You will be destroyed." I thought it was an empty threat until I saw the witnesses she'd brought, the lies she'd built, and the way the jury was already looking at me. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and stale coffee, the kind you find in government buildings that's been burning in the pot for hours. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my fingers interlaced so tightly my knuckles had gone white. Across the room, Maria sat with her lawyer. She wore a navy suit, too big for her frame, but she carried herself like she owned the place. When our eyes met, I felt that same electric chill I'd felt months earlier. It was the look. That look. The one she'd given me the day she said the words that had carved themselves into my memory. "You will be destroyed." She didn't shout it back then. She didn't need to. The power was in her calmness, in the way she let the words linger in the air, like cigarette smoke that clings long after the source is gone. Now here we were. Months of fear, threats, and sleepless nights had led to this room. I thought I was ready. I was. It started on an afternoon so ordinary, it shouldn't have been memorable at all. Vanessa and I had been sitting in the hallway outside a mediation room, waiting for our turn to go in. My hands were full of documents, evidence, emails, dates. My case was airtight, or so I thought. Maria arrived late. She walked right past me without saying hello. Then, when no one was looking, she leaned in just close enough so her perfume, sweet, sharp, artificial, filled my nose. "You will be destroyed." That was all she said before walking into the room. I remember looking at Vanessa, half laughing in disbelief. "Did she really just say that?" I whispered. Vanessa's face told me she had heard it too, but she shook her head like she didn't want me to dwell on it. I didn't know it then, but that was Maria's opening move. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice strange things. People who used to speak to me stopped making eye contact. Rumors, twisted versions of private conversations, began to spread. Emails I sent were taken out of context and passed around. Vanessa tried to reassure me. "They can't win if you have the truth," she kept saying. But I could feel Maria building something, a machine of lies, each one polished until it sounded believable. And then came the witnesses. Maria somehow convinced people to stand beside her, people who didn't even know the whole story. When I saw the list my lawyer handed me, my stomach dropped. They were coming for me from every angle. The courthouse was colder than I expected. I wore a black blazer, straightened my hair, and kept my makeup neutral, like I'd been told by every how to appear credible article on the internet. Maria walked in like it was a stage. Her smile was for the jury. Her glances at me were daggers. When her lawyer began questioning her, she didn't hesitate. She spoke clearly, with that kind of false sincerity that makes you question your own memory. By the third question, she was calling me unstable. By the sixth, manipulative. By the 10th, dangerous. Every word landed like a slap. I sat perfectly still, because in court, you're not allowed to react, not if you want the jury to think you're composed. When it was my turn to take the stand, I felt the weight of every eye in the room. The microphone picked up the tremor in my voice, but I forced myself to keep speaking. Maria's lawyer tried to trap me, asking questions that twisted my words, questions that could only be answered with yes or no when the truth was far more complicated. I looked at the jury. I could see some of them trying to piece things together, trying to figure out which version of reality they believed. And then I saw Vanessa. She was sitting in the back row, her eyes locked on mine. One small nod. It was enough. I told my story. Not in a rush, not in anger, but with the precision of someone who had lived every detail and could recall it without hesitation. Dates, times, emails, conversations. The truth came out piece by piece, like pulling bricks from a wall Maria had spent months building. By the time I was done, the smirk was gone from her face. The jury filed out. The waiting was the worst part. My hands were so cold, I had to sit on them just to feel them again. When the jury returned, I scanned their faces, searching for some clue. And then the words came. Not guilty. On every count. Maria didn't look at me when she left. No last glare, no whispered threat. Just silence. And for the first time in months, that silence belonged to me. Healing didn't happen overnight. For months, I still checked over my shoulder in parking lots. I still woke up at 3 a.m. with her words echoing in my mind. But slowly, I reclaimed my life. I started running again. I went back to my favorite cafe. I laughed without immediately glancing around to see who was listening. The truth had won, not just in the courtroom, but in me. Because Maria's greatest weapon had never been her lies. It had been my fear. And the day I faced her, I took that back.